How y'all doing? I had to come on here, if nothing else, to at least talk about Shola Allison and the medicine that this woman is. I've been trying to get on here for a minute, but getting myself together. I hope to be really quick here today. I just want to touch on the psychosis point and go a little deeper. And talking about going to the beach and doing like, a prayer or something, a ritual at some point soon. So let me know if you want to join that virtually. I'm going to probably go tomorrow. I may or may not record content, but yeah, I think that there is the space for the open content to just kind of share the experience on the water. And there's more intimate experiences that can be very specific to intentions that are being engaged and activated. Hope that makes sense. Bruh, I don't know about this light, but we're learning. We're learning day by day. Is this better? I don't know. My goodness, this stuff is so blinding. Okay, so Shola Allison. So if you follow me for a while, you know that I have been learning Yoruba for like ever, and I spoke it as a kid. The bottom line is that Yoruba is the language of my subconscious. Yoruba is the language that my body responds to the most. And it took me a very long time to realize like how deep that was. Like, it was not a joke. Not for me. Some people, if they had both languages as babies, or they had, and maybe I'm just unique, whatever, I'm still doing the research, but there is data that talks about the physiological effects of losing your first language. And it's a real thing. And so it makes sense in the like confrontation of empire. It makes sense why you losing your indigenous language that your cells have been programmed with for hundreds of years, why you losing that would disconnect you from yourself and from your body. Isn't that a strategy? The very language that programs your subconscious and your body, you can't access it because it's been ripped from you. I think I said it on one of the previous videos. They take that chip, they wipe that chip off of your brain. That is harmful. That is violence. That is genocide. That is, what do they call it? It's a subgroup of ethnocide, but it's like the language, destruction of a language. So it's crazy. So I was just like, I was getting emotional earlier because I was just thinking about how violent it is. How it's like one of the most violent things, most vile things you could do to separate people from their identity and from who they are. And as I wake up to so many things that like have just been uncovering, and some have been there and just kind of like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? It's a lot of just making sense of reality and articulating it in a way that other people can see what I see more, like more of the core community, this whole family. And number one in that is my daughter, my kid. I have to teach her everything I know, and obviously I'm doing that all the time. But having these records makes it easy for her to tap in whenever she needs. And obviously there's a lot of other children that I love and adore and that I have supported in their educational journey, just in, just helping people kind of like the way of like, what do you need to experience and study and do based on your aptitudes and your, tendencies. So I need to drink water. I'm so sleepy. It's like, I'm so sleepy. I haven't slept enough at all. So I just had to really push myself with this warm water. Hot to warm. I already took my melatonin, so that's the other thing. So I'm already asleep. But I had to talk about Shola Allison. Does anybody else listen to her? Can I play something? I'm obsessed. And it's getting to the point where I've played this song so much that like I'm gonna start hating it soon. So I need hi Sophia. I need help to like just listen to this with me. Can you just enjoy this with me? I'm so obsessed. Can you hear the birds? I'm to Shola. Carol. Can you hear the music? Do you know Auntie Shola Allison? I'm gonna read her bio. Let's pull up her bio. I'm so in love with everything she makes. I mean, she's really praying. She's really praying for us. She's praying for me for sure. Let me see if I can pull up her bio. How do you sit still listening to this? If you don't know, if you don't speak Yoruba, the Yoruba, what she's saying, there's nothing too hard. There's nothing too hard for God to do. And you know, the way she sings her songs with such body, you just know that she's been through it. She is singing to save her own life. Oh my babies. Okay, I'm gonna just try to pull up the lyrics. I just love this. I love this song so much. It's like giving me so much life. I'm just thanking God for this woman and her music. Love is what we use to see your miracles, to experience your miracles, I believe. I've been looking for the translation on video. Haven't found it yet, but I hope my sound is not like crazy bad with the loud music. But so where are we on this song? Time that is better or different. Nothing is too hard for God to do. Our Father lives in heaven. Owo, I think is Owo is honor, worship. I don't know. Ifeti reni koshe. Ifeti reni koshe. It is your love that you share. Ifeti reni koshe. Yeah, it is your love that you used to do something. I have to skip a couple lines. I think there she's saying that if I focus on the scary things, I will be afraid. I just need to listen. It's just so good. Just I'm obsessed. Hurry up and do mine. You will do a miracle. If I focus my heart on the things that are scary, I'm still trying to figure out what is Okuntokpinya. I don't know. A time that is better. Children. I don't know the last part of that. Hurry up and do mine. You'll do a miracle. Do a miracle. Y'all, I had a thought while I was sitting at the library with my daughter today and listening to this woman's music and just taking it all and just being blown away continually by the miracle. I thought about how I will inhabit that world of Yoruba praise and worship music and get so much life and juice and love and power and just peace from it. And then I will inhabit the world of like deconstructionist threads and how they're like tearing down, the fake church. And I agree with everything that they're saying about the fake church, but there's a real church. That's the thing. We can hate the fake church without hating Jesus. And I recognize, my daddy Jesus. I just love you, Jesus. And it's like you gotta like come out the closet as a Jesus freak in the Black like liberatory space, because people can look at you like you're crazy or you're stupid or like how could you possibly believe in Jesus? So like I'm liking stuff on both ends of the spectrum on threads, because like let me just crack my egg. Because I agree with all of it. And I was trying to ask myself like, okay, how is this authentic? Like, how can you be so, because people will see this as like so all over the place. How are you so tapped into all these different, sort of beliefs and perspectives? And the thing is, for me, I think all of it is true sometimes, right? At minimum. And how do we understand like what's actually happening in front of us and how we get to the other side, the new world, the other side where our imagination is what's dominant, as opposed to the madness that we're exposed to in this old realm. Excuse me as I get my protein in. I would love to present I have better manners in this. This video probably won't last very long. Okay, so I probably want to clip out something about identity. Yeah, so let me finish the egg and drink my water. Thank you for your patience. We'll talk about identity as a cure for cultural psychosis. I might even put a face on or something, because if I wasn't so sleepy, I would put a face on with y'all. Identity. What does identity mean to you? Can you just put that in the chat? Like, what is your identity and how do you identify, and what does identity mean to you? I'm going to tell you what it means to me. Interesting. Wow. Okay. I'm on the East Coast. So identity. I want you to tell me what identity means to you. So I see some commentary about gender transitioning. Please be gentle with me. I'm still learning like appropriate language in every corner of that space. But I want to talk about I'm queer. I want to talk about queerness and like all the things associated with that. So identity is the antidote for cultural psychosis, right? And so I was talking about the violence of separating people from themselves. You have to understand that I come at this work from a position of looking at Sudan, looking at Palestine, looking at people's homes being stolen in Brooklyn, looking at people being displaced from land everywhere in the world all the time by the parasites, looking at people suffering illnesses and violence and poverty that they don't need to, looking at lynchings of Black children and Black babies. I see all that shit. It's not a joke. And I have a child, like I don't know, where the other mamas are that are like really setting up shop like over the next 6-8 months, 6-8 weeks with their kids. If you're getting ready to like send your kids out into the world, we should talk, because I'm doing a lot of work around that. And I have a lot of intention and strategy behind how I support my daughter getting her ideal life. And there's a lot more that I want to do, obviously. And I want to support folks who want to do a bit that we have done. I love it. Thanks for the kind words. Um, yeah, identity, gender, queerness, love, romance, family, language. So I brought up Shola Allison because, my God, when it comes to Yoruba music, like I've always said, when you're learning a language, you need a bestie that speaks that language. You need somebody who's saying what you need to hear, where you can have conversations that matter to you. You need that conversation in your language. And like the way my Yoruba has been coming back is really crazy. Because I tell you, if you look at my videos from 2024 on NOIR Press channel, I believe, I don't think I put any here. On NOIR Press Media, I had some videos where I was speaking Yoruba, like predominantly, right? One on Oromayederu technology, which is an important one to check out. And it was really choppy, and it was okay because that was my first time speaking Yoruba with any real consistency, probably since 2018. So it had probably been like 6 years since I had actually like been immersed in and like actively speaking Yoruba. Maybe a little bit sprinkled in like late 2020, early 2021, but I was not speaking no serious Yoruba. You know, her father passed. He was fluent, obviously. That was 2011. And before that, of course, I was immersed in his world. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't speaking it to him constantly, but I was around him as he was like speaking it to others, right? So, and he obviously taught our Yoruba language classes too. So we'll come back to that. But I had different patches in my life where I was really deeply studying, and I really am grateful for those early like post college, like 20. I need to put that on my resume. I don't know if it's there. From 2007. Yeah, 2007 is when 2006 into 2007, but core, I remember 2007 is when I got really serious about learning Yoruba. I had the books. I was starting to get more music. I was starting to buy films more. I was exposed to films at my auntie's house down the street in Crown Heights. Shout out to Auntie Kenny. Shout out to Brownsville. Shout out to Abundant Life Christian Center. Hi, friends. Hi, friends. It's good to see you. I appreciate you. Sending you all the love from my heart to yours. Much appreciate your presence and your love and your kind words and energy. Yeah, so these were the days in Brooklyn. And I was just immersed in Yoruba language and culture constantly for the first time in my life, like since I was like a kid, you know what I mean? Growing up in the Midwest, I was exposed only when like my mother spoke it to her friends or family or on the phone, right? And so it was still in my subconscious. I was hearing it, which is a beautiful thing, at least, right? It was still part of my like, like consciousness on some level. But there was always the shame around like not knowing it, right? So there was a distance because of that shame and like the cultural isolation, the community isolation that happens because, again, if you speak to a man in a language that he understands, you're speaking to his head. But if you speak to a woman, a person in a language, in their original language, you're speaking to their heart. And when we talk about the heart in Yoruba culture, it's not just the physical organ, it's the spirit, it's the subconscious, it's the energy field. All of this like energetic stuff is the okon. So when you speak to my heart, like it is a completely different engagement. It's a different vibration. So I'm really curious more about the science about that. I've done a little bit of research. I'll be sharing some of that stuff. But yeah, we're bringing together all the different things, the quantum, the healing, blah, blah, blah. So I just had to talk about like the intersection. So it says Shola and Allison, Yoruba music, worship, the intersection of like all these different like spiritual traditions, right? And just coming from a place of like, okay, I engage with all these different traditions. It may be hard for somebody to understand like how is that authentic, right? I think often about a church member who I was having a conversation about. I had tried this church, I had been there for like a year or two. I tried this other church, I'd been there, and I always tell people about my Brooklyn church because 13 years I was in Brooklyn. Auntie Kenny put me onto Abundant Life Christian Center, and it changed my life. It was absolutely foundational for my like Christian journey. It was almost like some, I can't call it seminary, but the amount of like scripture and message and just experiencing of Christianity that I had there, it was absolutely formative. There were definitely periods. I had so many churches in my life. I was at a church before that. I think the most consistent church that I was in, I don't know if I really would count Miami, it was very short-lived comparatively. Friendship Baptist in Columbia, Missouri comes up. And before that, it was, the Catholic Church, Our Lady of Lourdes in Columbia, Missouri. So I want to hurry up and get up off of here because, whew. But I say that to say that all of this, especially in the shamanic journey, all of this is formation. All of this is education. All of this is absorption. It's ethnography, right? You're observing the world around you experientially in many ways and many times. And you are thus learning certain things energetically. So a thought that came to me earlier was just how truth is not in a book. Truth is felt in the field. Truth, you feel it. There's a genetic and physical element there, but there's also a radiance there. You know what truth feels like, and that is a sharpening, that you get to, like you get to that level where you understand that, embodied experience of truth. And when you experience embodied truth, you're just not looking at people the same because people are trying to tell you this rigid stuff, this book, this, and it's just like, okay, baby, I'm gonna just keep praying that you keep growing and learning and absorbing, the truth and the good news of the Most High, But this idea of division is it's entirely colonial. It's entirely made up. It's not a real thing. All these messages have meaning and value, and they've all been trying to say so much of the same thing. So we don't need to fight each other and disagree with each other and send each other to hell because of a text. Like, interrogate the history of your text, interrogate the translations, the history of the translations, right? When did your text start saying that you need to kill people in another religion? Please find it for me. God bless. Shout out to AZ. Shout out to Constantine. Shout out to Tankard. Yep. Yo, just thank you guys for being here. I'm grateful for the space to just, let it pour out. But yeah, so I've been listening to Charlotte Allison a lot, and it's really been opening me up. I was crying like a baby at the library today. I was just like, oh my goodness, it was opening me up, all the testimonies and stuff. And so, yeah, like I said earlier, like I can inhabit that space. And the thing is, when you feel truth, is embodied. There's nothing that you can do except feel it. And so Jesus, in that context, is medicine for me. That Yeshua, the Yeshua of light, of love, of affection, of kindness, of generosity, of prayer, of trust, of hope, of proof, of goodness, of kindness, right? That is the Yeshua that I connect to. And so when these other people get focused on like control and like power and violence, I can't relate to that. That has nothing to do with the Christ that saved me all the many times. In traditional African religions, African spiritual systems, indigenous spiritual systems, we understand that the divine is manyfold. The divine is a multitude of experience, of identity, sort of variations, let me say, right? We are all an embodiment of the divine who created us. At the same time, we are distinct models and the many, many lineages over so many eons of existence, right? All the different ways that we've been able to like manifest divinity in the material form. So I'm saying that to say we are eternal, and our ability to see the divine in each other. I like that quote or that phrase, the saying namaste, right? If you're familiar with namaste, The divinity in me honors the divinity. When I first heard that, I was like, what a beautiful thing to say to somebody. Like, that's what we should be doing in the church. You know what I mean? So when we're able to namaste for real, like when we're able to actually see the divine in each other, like it helps us first see the divine in ourselves, right? Which means that you got to see a divinity that looks like you, especially if you've been exposed to divinities that don't look or sound like you. They're not relatable to you, right? Oh, somebody said, I believe you are on the correct path. This is Constantine, which is rare these days. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's not easy. I got to, again, Charlotte Allison, Sola, last name Alllyson. Please check her out and tell me what you think because I'm obsessed. Um, so yeah, you know, I'm connecting with my identity, like learning what I learned about language, the impact of language loss on your physiology, your mental health, your life, etc. Um, the more I intended to speak Yoruba fluently, like on a conscious, continuous basis, right? It's something that's been in and out of my consciousness at different times, but it's always there, right? And when I hear some Yoruba, you know, I tap into it. So I want to talk a little bit about Kunle Afolayan. I've worked with him in a little bit in the past, and if you ever see this Kunle, you know that I love you. You're my favorite. I honor just everything about your work and everything about who you are. But when I think about Yoruba culture and access to Yoruba culture, access to Yoruba language, access to Yoruba art and visual culture, I think about Kunle Afolayan, right? Because when I'm trying to learn my language or reconnect with the indigenous memory inside my body of that language, I am looking to find myself in the language, right? I'm looking to find the version of myself that is most authentic in Yoruba, which means I want to hear Yoruba that says what I feel or what I'm asking, answers what I'm asking, right? It's like people and places and spaces that are, engaging with the same energy and vibration that I am in Yoruba language, right? So that is why Shola Allison is so exciting because the level at which she is operating is so. In these last 3 minutes, I just need to try and answer the question of how identity is a cure for cultural psychosis. So we've been talking about cultural psychosis as like this split consciousness, like this inability to sort of understand reality, right? This distinction between what is real for you and what is real for the collective, right? And so I'm going to just pull up some of the notes that we created earlier on this connection between identity and cultural psychosis, right? So I shared the download, I think it's been just about a week now and change. I shared the download of Nigerian cultural psychosis just coming to me, in meditation. And as I dug deeper into the language and the history of that scholarship, of course, Franz Fanon keeps coming up majorly. There's a lot of other people that I haven't fully commit their work to memory, and I'm working on that. But we've talked about Joy DeGruy, and I have to look up how to pronounce her name properly, but post-traumatic slave syndrome. There's so many people that have worked in the space. W.E.B. Du Bois is sociology, but there's very much like, obviously, psychological aspect to the double consciousness, things like that, right? So these are some of the core like tenets, but there's also Dolores Williams, I believe. Obviously, Bell Hooks, even Assata Shakur. Like we don't engage Assata Shakur as a philosopher often, but I think that that's a very important thing to engage with when we look at her and read her writing and listen to her speak. She was absolutely a philosopher. She was a poet. She was a prophet. So just, the landscape of intelligence from our leaders who have done this work before us, right? And really taking that as like major value, and major weight, and letting them shape our thinking, right? Combining the intelligences instead of just what we're being given by the colonial educational system or media, us filling our thoughts with the intelligence of the people who fought for our liberation, and especially those who were effective to some point, right? Um, and I'm even putting Shola Allison in this class because it's so important for people to understand the spiritual element of this work, right? We don't center it that much normally. When we do center it, is very much about what I do see is, people celebrating their practice of Yoruba Ifa, spiritual technology, community initiation, etc. Like I know a lot of people were initiated, and a lot of those people were attracted to Yoruba language, Yoruba Cultural Institute, right? Because they wanted to learn the language to practice the faith with more intention and more awareness and understanding, which I fully understood and appreciated, but the language is obviously a portal to the spiritual tradition, right? I'm still trying to connect the dots, but you can't have one without the other, right? You can't have Yoruba tradition without Yoruba language. You can't have Yoruba language without Yoruba tradition embedded in there, right? People develop their worldview over generations and they embed it in their language, right? They, we make up songs and stories and words and sounds to document what we are feeling, what we are experiencing, right? And this is how languages evolve and they grow and they sharpen and they strengthen and they're able to document history, contemporary history, right? Like they're able to participate in the evolution of the world. They're able to participate in the shaping of the world using the word, right? The written word, the spoken word, the sung word. So when I'm talking about putting someone like Shola Allison in that category, I'm talking about the medicine that she is providing for leaders in her music, right? Spiritual leaders, healers, and all the many, many people who are out there like that, who I'm still praying to find more of, right? Who provide this medicine. Because when you do this work, especially a lot of us can be isolated for long periods of time because that's where the downloads come in. Hello, we know it has to happen, right? But if you're isolated for long periods of time, you are looking, it's an opportunity for you to tap into the grid and sort of attract and welcome and invite the voices, the messages, the guides, the teachers, right? The insights, the visions that you need for this time for you to do the next thing, right? For you to get to the next level on the game. Anybody play Super Mario Brothers as kids? I have to do a lot of content around that and just like this intersection of like gamification of spiritual liberation from within. But I feel all over the place. So I'm just going to bring it back to identity and language and Shola Allison and her music reactivating the Yoruba like SIM card in me or whatever, right? Like that motherboard is activated. I feel it. So I was talking about how in 2024, the Yoruba that I spoke then, it was like, I hadn't spoken in like 6 years, like consistently. And so for me to remember what I did was shocking to me because I hadn't spoken it in so long. So I was like, but my spirit told me to stop speaking English. I had to speak Yoruba. Like, and even for that type of thing to happen, it's like, who's going to believe that that's sane, except for the members of Sangha House Nola. Shout out to my Sangha, my family over there. I'll be back very soon by God's blessing. So I was in Sangha House Nola and I had this message, because I went there to really like activate the next level, the portal, whatever. And I had a lot of time to just really soak in and listen and talk to the divine and just engage and experience and embody things. And there was a major message of like, stop speaking English. And it was one of those moments of like, you can't be serious. Like, I don't think am I imagining this? Like, I must be making this up. I can't be normal. Right now, stop speaking English. And it became really uncomfortable to speak. Like, it became really uncomfortable to try to speak in English. So I had to force myself to remember my language, right? Because the thing about, shout out to Oduduwa School of Yoruba, 2007, when I got really serious about learning Yoruba and even building classes around it, we learned the foundations. We learned, how to build the house of a Yoruba sentence. And this is one thing that Mr. Akinyele, Yetunde's dad, was very, very he was very serious about, very technical about when he taught people English and grammar and things. He would always say like, it's like building a house. You have to know the parts that you need to build a house. And so once you learn those core parts in Yoruba, which I find that most Yoruba speakers that I engage don't know those core parts. I'm talking about fluent Yoruba speakers don't know the technology of the language, the systems of the language, because they just grew up speaking it. They didn't have to learn this stuff. Some, if you're really fortunate to have like to be from a family that is of like that sort of like cultural class that understands the importance of power of indigenous language and elevating the language and moving the language forward as a way to move the people forward in the collective story of the world, right? If you're fortunate to be from that kind of family, then you would have like this worldly education and you would still speak like top tier Yoruba, right? But that's super rare. And so most people know the Yoruba that they learn from family. I have to look up when was the last time, I think we're bringing it back now, but before this recent resurgence of interest in indigenous language, I want to look at like the data on how many Nigerian kids, how many Yoruba kids were learning Yoruba in school, in public schools in Nigeria and even private schools. But if your government is not elevated enough to ensure that everybody is learning their African language, they are a puppet. I don't care. Every single African child should be mastering at least one, if not two, if not five African languages in the classroom at the school. That should be a number one priority of an African government. If your government is not prioritizing African language education, fire them. Make them prioritize it or fire them. Because you should not be getting up every day to live on the continent of the most powerful people and the most valuable minerals in the world, and you can't talk to your neighbors in the indigenous language of that land, of your ancestors, of the blood that runs through your veins. That is a crime against humanity. So insist that your governments fund the education of your indigenous languages, and that's reading, writing, speaking, public speaking. Once you have that, then you take it to the level of we need to be learning things in our indigenous languages. Especially when you do this and you start with people young, they will master multiple languages with ease, which means that it becomes easy for them to learn science in their indigenous language. Shout out to Science in Yoruba on Instagram and all the other platforms. We can learn math in our language. We can learn trigonometry in our language. We can learn chemistry in our language. Why the heck not? But where are the technical terms, right? So there's a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of research. There's a lot of people who have been building databases, LLMs, et cetera, for like Yoruba language, and Yoruba language, like, with technology terms and science terms, all these terms that we don't see often because we're not usually engaging that level of our intelligence in our indigenous language, which is a problem. Your fluency and your mastery of your language should be at minimum equal to your fluency and mastery of the colonizer's language. If you read the description of this video, you saw that I said I do not consent to colonization anymore. I'm declaring myself free of colonization, which means that I need to start speaking my language as a primary language. You can't talk about, dissolving empire, leaving empire, but you still speak their language predominantly, right? So I have to do that and I have to transition in that way, which means I also have to teach my kid who went and spent this month in Japan and loved it and now knows more Japanese than she does Yoruba. I gotta fix that urgently, right? Which means I gotta curate the best of Yoruba art, Yoruba music, Yoruba film, sounds, everything that I can immerse her in as Yoruba that will help her to, embed more of the language in her own subconscious, right? And learn it formally with me as we work on our education schedule over the next few months. So I've talked about identity at a very like cosmic, biological, ethereal, energetic level today. And I think that that's valuable enough, right? And I can quickly say I put the names of my ancestors' bloodlines in the chat because when we talk about ancestor veneration and we argue about that basic stuff, like that is the minimum of ancestor veneration, right? I'm calling my ancestors names, right? This is the bloodlines. These are the people whose spirits I am part of. It's not something that's up for debate. We are the same. We have the same blood. We have this sort of cosmic, energetic community. That's why we're able to, be born. I'm forgetting the word I wanted to use. That's why we're able to enter this timeline in correlation with each other, right? Because there's already some sort of ethereal connection. And so When we don't talk about that, we don't know about that, that's just stupidity. It's not even about religion. It's just stupidity. I'm just like, if anybody can tell you that it's not okay to teach your kids about your parents and your grandparents, that is literally stupidity, because that's literally like your DNA that's running through your blood and you don't know about it. I understand a lot of us have like estranged family members. We have a lot of trauma there. We're going to talk about that. But I'm saying if you have access to your family and that knowledge, and I have a lot of assignments. So we got to talk about like these, like, who are you assignments, but we have to know our bloodlines. We have to know our stories, our histories as much as we possibly can. And we have to see what the colonial record holds, right? How much of their administration involved our bloodline data? What do they have about us, right? So those are some of the things that I am invested in. And, our identity is bloodline, but it's so much more. I'm seeing like the visuals on textiles. I'm seeing my Adire obsession. I'm seeing Ashoke. I'm seeing, batik of different Kampala. To me, I call Kampala like the more colorful ones, but I don't know if that's the right application. It's always been a mixture in my communities, my circles. So I have to study more about that though. So it's the visual culture, right? It's the art, it's how we dress, it's how we make our faces, how we wrap our heads, right? It's how we move, it's how we talk, right? How we use our mannerisms. Like there's so many things that sort of illustrate a people's identity when you look at them, right? And we're talking about collective identity as a, antidote to cultural psychosis. Because then you're grounded in actual reality, right? And not just a message, a story, a lie that somebody told you because they wanted what's under your land, right? So when we're connected to these details of who we are, we get to embody it, we get to see it, we get to experience it. It just reinforces that sense of identity, right? It just lets us know, like, it just grounds us in a physical reality in a way that is very powerful, right? It is a rootedness in a security and a groundedness. It's like, this is who I am, this is where I come from, this is what I know, this is what my family has always known, this is what my bloodline has always known, this is our story, this is where our story is going, right? And so the more I learned about Oba Akinṣẹmọyins, who was a former king of Lagos, the more, it opened up certain things in my family that I'm like, oh, I have to do this, I have to talk to this person, I have to understand this. And so, because I am doing this for my kid, because I need my kid to know who she is, because identity is one of the number one skills, knowing your identity. I mean, we're calling it a skill set now, but it really should be just basic human existence, right? We're calling it a skill set because there was a virus that came and took that away from our existence because they knew what they were doing. It was very intentional. Because that is one of the most powerful things you have is a sense of identity. And when they take that from you, they break that, then it becomes easy for them to terrorize you in every other way. Right. So when I think about how did we get here, what spell did they put on us? Like what sort of like sonic violence have they been using? Identity is one of the core things, right? That's how you get to cultural psychosis because you don't have a grounding. You don't have something concrete that you can say, here's the history, here's the lessons, here's the math, here's the stories in my language. I can feel it in my body, my physiology, because it's what I've always been and always felt. When you don't have that, then it's really easy for people to insert things into your consciousness, right? And so that's why education is one of the first things attacked by a colonial government. Hold on a second. Yeah, education is one of the first things they're going to attack because they have to get into your mind. They have to reprogram your children. They have to take you away from your children so you don't have time to teach them what you know. Because you have to work for $5, a day cleaning somebody's hotel or something, right? So just to be able to barely eat and survive, right? So just that disruption of a parent's access to their child, the child's access to their parents is colonial violence, right? There's just so much that we can pick apart. But in order for us to get back to a sense of identity, we have to learn who we are, which means we have to ask each other questions. So I just encourage you, if you're watching this, you're a child, ask your parents questions. If you're a teenager, ask your parents questions, ask your grandparents questions. Make sure you have a secure copy of your family tree somewhere on one of your devices or print it out somewhere. Have a visual representation of your family tree, right? And if you don't have all the information, it's fine. At least have the tree with the open spots. So as you do the research, you know where you're going to go place it right away. Have a visual of your family tree to know where you come from is very important. In all of these religions, they base the validity of their savior, of their prophet, in the bloodline. There's a reason for that, right? So us paying attention to our bloodline, us paying attention to our our mannerisms is what's coming up. But it's like when I think about mannerisms, they're mannerisms of speech. They're mannerisms how we use our eyes and our bodies and our hands. They're mannerisms how we, dance, right? I don't know if I'm using the proper scientific terms, but sociological terms, whatever category it would be. But yeah, we have a language of existence. We have a language of like just our vibe, right? Based on where we are in the world. I talked to a friend today who just got a PhD from Yale in like a field but he basically studies geology and like seismic earth shifts and things like that. So we were talking about how I find it interesting that, and I'm curious about it, I don't have any facts on this, but I have this idea, this sense that people, the culture and the energy and the vibe of a place is very like resonant to like what is the geological makeup of that land, right? What kind of vibes are the crystals putting out, right? Do you believe that crystals do scientific things that have been documented, or do you just refuse to engage because you were indoctrinated? So geology of the land and how people are. So all of that to say, like, your identity obviously starts with your parents, you know, their parents, right? The land from which you came and were born. Like, what land did the people in your bloodline spend the most time on, right, in history, or lands? And language, getting engaged with your language in any which way that you can, getting access to the worldview of your ancestors, your grandparents, your great, 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 great grandparents. What was the worldview that was embedded in the language that they spoke? What was documented in art and whatever at that time? What did the Vatican take? What did the British government take? What did the US government take? What did the UN take? Where, these are the basic reparations. We're talking about reparations. Where is all our data? That's the minimum reparations that I would want, right? Where's all our historical data that you stole? Anyway, in lieu of the access to the Vatican, we have access to the light within, right? And this is what Shala's music is constantly reminding me of and opening me up and making me cry so much, because it's a reminder. Everything I know, I learn from spirit, I learn from the divine, I learn from God, Holy Spirit, meditation, support, guidance. The Holy Spirit before the Holy Spirit, and then the real Holy Spirit when I got to know, like, oh, you were real, I mess with you. This is serious. Having that, I gotta play some Sunny Ade. Oh my God, do you know Sunny Ade? Okay. I don't know. Yeah, see, this is how it be. I'm tired. I need more water. Your parents, your grandparents, your bloodline, your land, studying your language, getting access to the language, and you can access it within. You can pray and meditate and ask the divine. I have an ancestral altar, and that has been one of the big parts, like big keys for like activating my intention and my desire, my expectation for like the healed bloodline, like reactivating. And, it's like been different waves over the years, but that space is a space for me to just acknowledge and remember, like, okay, I have a bloodline, like we have a story. My parents have their stories, my uncles have their stories, my aunts have their stories. All of these stories are important. All of these stories make up the history of my bloodline. All right, but a lot of people are like very protective of their stories. There's a lot of shame, a lot of fear, a lot of fear of being exploited, or people sort of like talking down at you after they know certain things about you. And all of this is the colonial mindset of trying to be better than one another as opposed to trying to be one, right? This is what disruption of identity does. You don't see yourself, and thus you don't see yourself in the next person that is like literally across the street from you on your land and has lived in the same land for like the last 2,000 years. You don't connect with that person because you're far more connected with your aspiration to the colonizer. You want to be like the colonizer, subconsciously or consciously or both, right? Your aspiration is to be like the colonizer because that's what they taught you. That's what they programmed you in your education. That is the goal of education. Is the colonial education is to make you aspire to the colonizer, to make you want to be near the colonizer, proximity to the colonizer, make you want to aspire to whatever the colonizer wants from you, right? That is the purpose of colonial education. And so when you are participating in that, and especially don't also have like the indigenous African epistemological education, then this is how you get so far from your identity that you don't know who you are. You don't know your history. You don't know your purpose. You can't see your goals. You can't believe in yourself. It's hard to stay fueled up. It's hard to stay focused. It's hard to stay energized. We need to do some breath work. So the opposite of that is knowing yourself, knowing that you come from a powerful bloodline, even if everything wasn't perfect in your bloodline, knowing that your people overcame hardship, knowing that you survived because your ancestors did at least that correctly. If you want to say anything else bad about them, we don't know their stories. They made it so that you could get here. So they did something right. Because you're here in this time of the age of awakening. You're here in this time of this age of Aquarius. You're here in this time of the new world. You are here in this time for a reason, with a consciousness that is desiring freedom, that is desiring peace, that is desiring wholeness and holiness and kindness and these high vibrational experiences to permeate the world and liberate the world. How can we raise children who are, how can we raise children who would settle for anything less than that liberated world when we know that this is possible with what's in front of us, right? So identity comes back to purpose, right? I talked about a lot of really concrete, like tangible stuff. Human design, I want to mention human design. I want to mention just getting your astrological chart. I'm trying to remember the name of the site that I use. I used to use Pattern. It was just a lot of negative messages, but it was very effective at kind of showing me like my grid. Yeah, so all these different systems that will teach you, there's like the Myers-Briggs, of course, which I don't really engage with as much. I'm sure that there's value to it. But I actually think about like Yoruba cosmologies, Igbo cosmologies, ancient Egyptian, Nubian, all these cosmologies as being a very interesting sort of parallel to the identities that we're kind of given access to. I'm trying to reconnect it to the original source because we're talking about the prototypes, the archetypes. I always mix up the words. The archetypes in the indigenous traditions as compared to, I don't know what other archetypes we were talking about. Okay, so the personality test, right? So the personality test and then like the indigenous archetypes, right? How the personality tests tell you, oh, you're this type of person. You should expect this, this, and this. You should focus on this, this, and this, right? The astrology tells you you're this type of person, blah, 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 blah. These are the people you would be most compatible with. This is what your life is going to look like, right? And then you have the archetypes in the indigenous traditions who have very certain specific sort of characteristics about them, just kind of like how there are certain characteristics associated with your generator identity in human design, right? All of these things are part of like your purpose identity, helping you understand why you exist, why you were born, why you were created, and where your joy lies, right? Like allowing yourself to tap into your joy and your freedom. Getting free within is about knowing yourself and loving yourself and embracing yourself, recognizing yourself. We've been talking about self-love for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And, some people have been wise well beyond that, before that, like true deep self-love. what is being revealed to me in this time is self-recognition, right? Self-love gives you the access, the opportunity to get to a place of self-recognition, because self-love just gives you the right to like pour back into yourself, to give yourself time, to be patient with yourself, to say nice things to yourself, right? Self-love allows you to prioritize just being good to yourself from time to time, constantly, daily, right? And then as you do that, you learn more about yourself, and you start to raise layers and ask questions and try to understand, like, oh, is that actually me? Is that who I want to be? Like, this thing happened, this is what I did. Is that how I want to be in the world, right? Okay, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to change it, right? So then you start to grow. Self-love allows you to grow. It allows you to be like, okay, I see this thing that I've been doing. It served me in this way, and now I want to do something different, you know? Yeah, so I just want to see about this. Like, this is my wax. I use it for my lips and my skin, my face. Anyway, it's handmade beeswax, coconut oil, castor oil stuff. Try to make my own petroleum jelly. Okay. So I don't know how we're going to edit this to make it make sense, but your identity, there's a purpose identity, right? There's the version of you, or the version of you in your mind, in your heart, in your embodiment, that is the fulfilled version of you, is the version of you that knows your purpose, knows why you're here, knows who you're supposed to become, knows who you're supposed to serve, like what your purpose is, why you are here. What are you supposed to do with this breath? What are you supposed to do in this lifetime? How do you get it done? Who's supposed to be part of it? How do you get paid for it? How do you make it your life? Your livelihood, right? All these questions are connected to your identity. We talked about identity coaching some weeks back. We're going to keep coming back to that, right? So when you have a identity, when you have a true sense of who you are, where you come from, why you exist, what is important for you to do while you are here, then you tap into that identity. You get fuel and fire and light and guidance and wisdom from that identity. You engage identity. You deepen your understanding and intimacy and connectedness with that identity. That identity becomes real for you every day, every moment you engage with it. It sharpens, it manifests a little bit more in your biology, in your body, because you have thought about it. You have energized it, you have engaged it. Instead of giving energy to the cobble and the things they want you to be distracted by, you're giving energy to your manifestation in your cells of that experience that you desire to have, right? Oh, speakers died. I would have played some meditation music for y'all. Might see about some of the other devices. So you want to sharpen your identity. You want to sharpen your sense of identity. You want to sharpen your understanding of who you are, where you come from. Do you have a vision board? Do you have any sort of wall? Do you have anything visually around you in your bedroom, in your space, that reflects back to you the image of who you think you are, who you want to be? Where is the evidence around you in your environment that of who you are aspiring to become, who you are working to become, right? How does that identity show up in how you dress, how you show up in your routines? How does that identity show up in your voice, how you articulate yourself, like what you communicate? I've been talking about my Yoruba diary. I said I would read something to you guys from the Yoruba diary very soon. It's been so good for my soul. That was the other thing I kept trying to come back to. This time that I've come back to taking Yoruba more seriously, my vocabulary is crazy, so much higher than even 2024. And again, from that period in 2024 until now, there hasn't been a period where I was really, really serious about, like, I was thinking about it. I did the classes, right? But after the classes, there was very minimal space to get engaged, right? And so my intention has become, I'm calling in my people. I'm calling in my people. I'm calling in my Yoruba speakers who are excited about quantum physics, quantum mechanics, spirituality, divinity, access to the divine algorithm, the grid, breaking the matrix, rewriting a whole new matrix, just floating as light beams, recreating and redesigning reality, magnetizing your people energetically, experiencing your people in community co-located, experiencing the fruit of the earth, the raw, healthy, organic fruit of the earth, living in rest, in joy, and abundance, and success and impact from using your gifts, sharing your gifts. If this is you, if you're a child, a teenager, an adult, an elder, if you are somebody who wants to live through your light and you need help, you need a partner, you need a backup, you need a homie that's going to help you like get to that finish line. If you need a homie that's going to help you get to that finish line, that North Star, I'm the one you're going to call for that. Okay. Should I give y'all the phone number? You can call or text 347-866-1645. You're the few who are getting to see this video because I could almost promise you this video is going to go unlisted very soon. But you can call me 347-866-1645. I'm going to leave that avenue for a little while. I might edit this out at some point, but yeah, if you want to just talk about like what you're working on, right? I will give some free consultation. I have like one space a week for like a free consultation. And then if you want more time, then we can talk about like what that exchange looks like. My prices are set to a certain standard of value, but I'm also always happy to work out exchanges. It doesn't have to be cash only. But yeah, I want to work with you if that's your position, if that's your identity. If you don't have cash, but you have ashoke, you have adire, you have kampala, you have any ancient textiles from West Africa or other parts of Africa, I would love to talk to you about that. So my services it's coaching, it's storytelling, it's partnerships, it's helping you design partnerships, it's helping you design a roadmap. It's helping you build out your vision and your message and your language and your platform. It's helping you operationalize your message and finding an avenue that will be healthy for you to consistently share your message and your vision and your story. Yeah, it's just helping you like get to that point. I do retreats. I'll do the one-on-one coaching. I'll do partnerships with you for your package of storytelling for your organization alongside technology implementation, right? Build you something like the Brooklyn Arts Council's BIP, build you something like PORTALX, build you something like anything that you could imagine because we have the means to get things built within accessible pricing. So yeah, you want to talk more about this stuff, team@noirlabs.org. One free consultation a week. And then I have, if you want to just consult about your kid, you can Cash App us at NOIR Labs, $NOIR Labs. But you could DM, you can comment here, you can email us team@noirlabs.org. We can talk about just like exchanging hours to help your kids get to the finish line in terms of who they're supposed to be, what environments they need to be in, what schools they need to be applying to, how do they identify and maximize and magnetize the right scholarships for them. Yeah, so much to do here. But I hope to see y'all again soon. Comment below if you want to come to the beach with me tomorrow, or if you're somebody who's up early, like East Coast time, or if you, wherever you'll be in the world at that time, whatever time it'll be for you, if you're somebody who would love like a movement experience on the water. So I'm just doing that for myself, but I don't know if any of y'all out here are inclined in that way. All right, it's been a pleasure. Thank y'all for this time. Thank you for your community. Thank you for your energy, your vibes, your subscriptions, your comments, and just all the love and the kind words. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I pray peace for you. I pray ease. I pray joy. I pray success. I pray community. I pray intimacy. I pray connection. I pray alignment. I pray rest. I pray trust. I pray reliance on the divine. I pray ancestral support. I pray energy. I pray healed bloodlines. I pray healed intimacy between mother and child, father and child, grandfather and child, grandfather and great-great-great-grandchild. I pray healed bloodlines. I pray reactivated energy of healed bloodlines, thriving Black families. I pray thriving Black families. I declare thriving Black families. I declare Black women sanctuaries. I declare temples. I declare waters. I declare pools. I declare beaches. I declare oceans. I declare thriving Black families and communities in Yeshua's mighty name. Asha. All right. I hope I got the point across. Love y'all. Talk soon. Peace.